that they're like Lysenko. If you try to speak the truth, you're put in a prison camp. And incidentally, the geneticists from Soviet Russia, that Lysenko and his environmentalists were so afraid of trying to tell the people that there was a difference, died in a Russian prison camp.
Really?
It's quite a story. I mean,
Amazing.
when you come to this sex education, we can but be reminded of the accuracy or the forecast of various early socialists from the communist countries, Russia. What's his name? Pavlov's experiments, where he laid this down. He said we must be able to infiltrate with a fifth column in the United States, prevail upon the Christian forgiveness, the brotherhood attitude of the American people, and by getting them to be permissive and tolerant and the great-hearted people that most Americans are, we will be able to infiltrate into their courts and into their laws and into various matter, so that we will in the end be able to gain, through the use of drugs, sex education, perversion, and moral breakdown, one generation. There will be a one-generation gap. And we hear this, some of our educators talk about a generation gap.
Yeah.
They refuse to say that, of course, they made the gap. They're the ones that have torn the children away from the parents and turned them on society, turned them against the parents, turned them against fundamental Christian concepts and beliefs, and turned them actually against the heritage which is that of the American people that we owe to pass on to our children. And then here sits Pavlov, the political, the social politician. He says, give us one generation, and the American people will never again be able to capture us.
I just did a program with him.
Well, it's quite interesting. Of course, I tell many of these young children that come to me, and they've got all kinds of wild ideas. I said, the amazing thing is you say you're rebelling against us and you're rebelling against discipline. I said, one thing I can assure you is that when you have children, your children are going to rebel against you. Mm-hmm. And probably the first thing they'll do is they're going to cut their hair and take a bath and put shoes on. And I said, so you haven't got any hold on civilization either. But the only thing that worries me about all of this over-promiscuousness, this libertinism, is that it's going to create a generation gap.
Yeah.
And our youth in America are the strength. They're the future of the American people in the free world. Mm-hmm. And really what they are, they're just as much a matter of national defense as our guns, our ABMs, our tanks, or anything else. Mm-hmm. We can't win a war either politically, intellectually, or by use of force in the military if we don't have this large reservoir of willing, forward-thinking Americans. I mean, they're going to just tear us apart. There's not going to be anything here to resist or to continue our American tradition.
True. Very good. Now, you and I have discussed the Vietnam War and whether or not this administration is going to change its policy or change the policy of the national government and go in and win. I was reading an article here that you prefaced on the Vietnam War, and I would like for you to discuss this a little bit. Here is a man, what's his name? Mr. Z.A. Rust. He's a foreigner.
Yes, sir. He is a foreign nobility.
I read...
lifelong diplomat.
I read that clear through in my hotel room.
Isn't it amazing? Here's a foreigner who, sitting in a distant country, 500,000 miles away. Mm. And this man is able to know more about what's going on in the political scene than many of us who try to be concerned and keep informed in the United States. And I asked this man, I said, well, how do you know so much about our policies and our people? And he said, the communists ran me out of my country better than 25 years ago. And he said, we have no choice. She said, what the United States does is our life. He says, I have no home. I have no one to depend upon. He said, the only chance that we have, we from the overrun countries, is the chance that the American people will eventually wake up before it's too late.
Uh-huh.
And this is why they keep in so immediate contact with our political statements and our policies and our direction.
Do you think that we're going to pull out of Vietnam, or are we going to open up and follow this Brigadier General of the Marine Corps as advice? Which you think?
Well, of course, what is right and wrong is no longer of any significance in political circles here in Washington. The only policy is devised on what gets votes and how to stay in office.
Terrible.
And of course, looking at it from the president's viewpoint, he's saying, how will I get more votes? He knows he can win the war, but he says if I go ahead and win the war, they're going to tear me up as saying that I'm some kind of a hawk. On the other hand, if I can get any credit for bringing peace, even through surrender, then of course the various church people and the pacifist-minded people will give me back. And of course, if I'm going to be reelected, my main thing is to get votes. Mm-hmm. And of course, we're reminded today that yesterday, an airplane with 31 American boys on board, our sons, they're not mercenaries, these are our boys, we force them to go there to defend us, were shot down off the coast of North Korea. Many of the Republicans had become so, let's say, thought control through sensitivity training that they had indicated that they thought the late President Eisenhower had won the war in North Korea, and suddenly looking back we found there never was any peace treaty and there never was anything but an agreement.
Right.
And here we have a man who is in history as a great peace-giving president, and young men being killed today in a battleground where they were not even born when the battle went on.
Right.
So of course, with the proper build-up and the play on words and the fear, the fright peddling that can be thrown out, President Nixon can easily see that he can just gradually pull our troops out of South Vietnam, and he can justify his surrender move by just saying, well, I saved your son's life, I brought peace to the Middle East, and then we'll just overlook the bloodbath that will follow. And of course, it's not even an issue of whether we back the president or whether we are for an immediate, just sudden withdrawal. We must look at the alternatives. And of course, we always hear the alternatives of Russian involvement and the Red Chinese involvement should we escalate. Yet the Russians are escalating, and certainly they're looking at alternatives too. They're figuring, well, how far can we push the Americans?
Yeah.
On the other hand, if we just pull out of the Orient, will we ever go back again? And of course, the answer is no. And if we have surrendered our integrity to all of the free nations in the world, then no one can ever trust us again. I mean, a treaty is no longer but a piece of scrap paper if the American government signs it. If we won't defend in communist aggression in Vietnam, will we defend it in the Philippines? No, we wouldn't defend it there. Would we defend it in Hawaii? Why, of course not. We wouldn't defend it then in California, and when it comes to the west bank of the Mississippi, we won't defend it on the east bank. And it's a matter that somewhere along the line, someone has to come up and tell our leaders that if they really want peace, you don't get it by just a bunch of verbiage of talking that we don't want to win and that we're ashamed of what we're doing. We have to say, if we're going to have peace, we're going to go in and get it. And the only thing you do in this is you don't escalate anything but your policy. The escalation is we suddenly tell our military people, let's come up with a plan to win. We don't even have a military plan to win in South Vietnam. Our military people have been forbidden to come up with a plan for victory. Let's suddenly have our policy people start talking. If Ho Chi Minh isn't at the peace table in earnest in 2 weeks, we're going to go and get him and bring him to the peace table. And I assure you that if the Russians and the rest of these birds over there know we're going to go out to do whatever we have to do to back up our boys, and we send them to do a job, and they certainly, if they're doing a job for us, they expect us to back them. We tell them we're going to back them to the hilt, and we're going to go in and get him, and we're going to have peace. But you can only have peace through victory. You can never have any settlement of any kind because There's nothing to induce the communists today to go to the peace table.
Now you can just hear the doves screaming at you and me both. But here,
they're not doves. The
no.
doves have cost the lives of more boys in South Vietnam than all of the bullets that have been hitting our men.
Well, I'm glad.
A South Vietnam boy can die. One of our Americans can die just as dead from hate bullets as he can from love bullets.
Sure.
And all they're doing is they are prolonging the war by falsely encouraging the communists to think that maybe we're going to give up and quit, and giving him false encouragement that this is an unpopular war and that people are divided. And if they would shut up all this loudmouth anarchy and get behind the policy of our country, we'd get peace there a lot quicker. We'd have already saved 15,000 boys. Mm-hmm. But these peace marchers are the true enemy of the American people because they are responsible. Ministers and teachers and all that march in protest to this. They don't march in protest to the communist aggression. So we know this, that their only objective is to prolong the war and have more and more loss of life until they think that eventually the American people will give up and demand, Mr. Nixon, that we bring the boys home.
Mm-hmm. We have less than 2 minutes. I wish this has really gone fast. I wish you had time to go a little further in this. And yesterday we were discussing, not on tape, who really runs this country. I have to leave here Friday night. Suppose we can get together for another half hour and...
I have a speaking engagement Friday night up in New Jersey.
Uh-huh.
I'm trying to spend at least two weekends a month out on the road because, as you can well see, I get very little publicity. They don't dare permit views such as mine to reach the American people. I don't try to reach conclusions. I only try to get them to think. Mm-hmm. And this is taboo. This is censored today. So I'm sorry, but I won't be able to be.
I'm sorry, Congressman. We would like for the audience to respond to this broadcast. As you know, this is a tape broadcast in the office of Congressman John Rarick from the state of Louisiana. For your letters and your comments, I want you to write me a letter. Address it to the Bible Institute, Post Office Box 2157, Mesa, which is spelled M-E-S-A, Arizona, zip 85201. In the 20 seconds that I have left, I want you to pray for Congressman Rarick because, believe me, the bigwigs in Washington and over the country are after this man to destroy him. He's told me some things that I can't tell you over the air, but you pray for him. And God willing, I'll be back tomorrow with another good man from Capitol Hill in Washington.